For what it is. That's what you say when something doesn't suck as much as you thought it would. That's what you say about chain steakhouses, off-brand smartphones, and really any strip club located on Dixie Highway. That's what you say about the Ruger P89. It's a good gun, you know, for what it is. But instead of using that vague approximation of cheapness as a pretext for our discussion of the Ruger P89, we're going to flip the script and talk about what the P89 isn't. Because that's honestly a much more interesting discussion. And if you come here for anything, you come here for interesting discussions on interesting guns. Alright folks, it's P89 time, and this is one I've been looking forward to doing for a while because honestly I feel like someone needs to set the record straight on the P-Series pistols. And I think, again, the best way to do that is talk about what this gun isn't. The P89 is not what you think, it's not what you expect, it's not what you've been led to believe by these pervasive pretensions of cheapness that really, I think, kind of undermine the true merits of this pistol. This gun is not a compromise. Again, starting with what this gun isn't. This gun really isn't a compromise in any way. And as we'll get into, it performs on par with its contemporaries that were designed in the 1980s for the U.S. military service pistol contract, like the Beretta 92, the Walther P88. This is the P88 Compact. And you know, Sig Sauer P-Series guns. This is a P229, not the P226. But it really holds its own with any of those guns, as I've found. I was very pleasantly surprised at just how nice this gun is and just how well it shoots, and it's been 100% reliable and all those things. But with that in mind, what it isn't a compromise. I want to talk about the design of the gun because its genesis and its reason for existing is really interesting. And to understand that, I think you have to understand Ruger as a company and where they were coming from in terms of their business and how they approached the production of handguns. So let's get into a little bit of history about Ruger as a company and kind of what makes them unique as a firearms manufacturer, because that kind of plays into what makes the Ruger P-Series pistols unique, including this lovely P89 here. So Ruger's thing as a company, the thing that makes them unique, the thing that has made them successful, the thing that has really defined them as a company is investment casting. And casting is the process of pouring molten metal into a mold versus pounding it and beating it into a shape. And with casting, you can get closer to the shape of the finished product. So there's less machining, there's less, scrap involved in the manufacturing process. And you can, as far as I know, you can make like more cast things faster using a casting process. So casting is generally always a less expensive way to make stuff versus forging. So, if you can make a product from castings, you're gonna have a higher profit margin versus if your competitors are making stuff from forgings. The thing is, cast parts, of a similar size versus forged parts, they're not as strong as forging. So up until really Ruger got involved with investment casting and firearms, casting wasn't that prevalent in firearms manufacture. And I'm sure some things with guns were cast, prior to the 1950s when Ruger got involved with it. But as a general rule, firearms weren't made from castings. You know, in the early 1950s, Ruger had been producing nice, high quality, but affordable little 22 caliber target pistols. Ruger still has a successful business with those type of pistols today. They were actually made from stampings that were welded together, but they were cost effective to manufacture. And Bill Ruger Sr. thought casting was his next opportunity to take this, you know, quality for less paradigm that had made his company successful with these little 22 caliber pistols. And he thought, if I can figure out how to make good guns from cast parts, I'll be able to win on price versus all my competitors, which are generally using forged parts. He actually worked with a jeweler in Brooklyn, New York, before Brooklyn was all yoga studios and kombucha bars. And they developed this process to make a cast revolver. And I guess the first few iterations of it kind of sucked. There were, you know, quality control issues. But after some trial and error, they were able to make a decent little 22 caliber revolver that was purely made from castings. And that became the Ruger Single 6 22 caliber revolvers. And they were somewhat modeled on like they kind of look like the Colt single action Army. So that was really, to my knowledge, one of, if not the first, purely cast firearms. As time went on, Ruger started designing new firearms from the ground up based on their investment casting process. So they, instead of taking, you know, what was originally a forged design and adapting that to be a cast firearm, they designed their guns from the ground up and let the metallurgical properties of casting inform the design of their guns. So we started to see in the 70s, they started developing their double action service revolvers for, you know, law enforcement. And you started to see kind of thicker parts, thicker top straps, thicker hammers, thicker cylinders, thicker frames, that kind of a thing. Because again, cast parts don't quite measure up to forged parts of a similar size in terms of strength. So they started seeing some law enforcement contracts with their line of revolvers, again, which were all cast, and they got a reputation for reliability and durability, and, you know, life was good. But then in the early 1980s, the US military announced their desire for a new service pistol. So obviously, Bill starts seeing the same opportunity with a semi-automatic service pistol. You know, if I can make a fully cast service pistol, I'm going to be able to undercut all my competitors on price. And if I can make it in such a way that it doesn't give up anything in performance, you know, versus those competitors, I've got, you know, I'm going to win. So that was his goal with designing a new, you know, military grade service pistol. And Ruger hadn't really made any centerfire semi-automatic pistols. Again, they had made those little 22 caliber pistols, but nothing like this. And again, they had to design this gun from the ground up to be a fully cast pistol, and that meant bigger, beefier parts that could match a similarly sized forged part or exceed a similarly sized forged part in terms of strength. So we see on the Ruger pistols this thicker slide and, you know, beefier parts. And I mean, look at this barrel hood and this ejection port. It's even bigger than what you see on a Sig. The frames on the Ruger pistol are just Ruger pistols, the P-series pistols. They are just very wide, very large. The frames are actually cast aluminum. And, you know, obviously cast steel isn't as strong as forged steel, so we can imagine that cast aluminum isn't as strong as forged aluminum. And as far as I know, most other firearms that use aluminum alloy frames have a forged frame. So that's probably why we see such big, beefy frames on the Ruger pistols. And I think, you know, if you count the frame, this is the widest handgun I own. Interestingly, the Ruger P-series guns use a swinging link cam setup that, like, kind of like what you find in a 1911. And I don't know really many other guns that use that besides the 1911. It's like once Browning and Sive discovered the linkless approach to camming the barrel with the Browning high power. It's like the industry just kind of moved away from the swinging link. Yet, for whatever reason, Ruger incorporated that on their prototype as they were developing this pistol in the 80s. And, I wonder maybe that the solid lugs being made from a casting, maybe those weren't strong enough, so they went to that swinging link. I don't know, that's just speculation. And I will say that Ruger, on some of the later guns, when they started getting into 40 cal, like later in the 90s, and on some 45s, they actually did develop a proprietary linkless camming system. So I don't know exactly what the engineering reasoning is behind this and that change either, but obviously there was some reason for it. So they developed this thing in the early 80s, and unfortunately, the prototype wasn't quite ready for the XM9 trials in the early 80s, which kind of culminated in 1984. So when those trials started going on, Bill Ruger decided not to submit his prototype to the trials. We all know the Sig P226, and the Beretta kind of went on to dominate those trials. After the XM9 trials, Ruger kind of worked on their design for another year or so, and in 1985 they finally deemed it complete and released their prototype to the commercial market as the Ruger P85. And the P89, which I have here, is basically, as we'll get into, just kind of an upgraded P85. It's more or less the same gun. But then we all know that there was a lot of controversy, especially surrounding Beretta getting the contract. And, there were allegedly some Navy SEALs that broke some slides, broke some teeth. They decided to redo the trials and to see if Beretta's success was kind of a fluke. So that became what's called the XM10 trials that occurred in 1988, and Ruger decided to submit the P85 for those. It did really well, and it, I guess, hung in there with the Beretta 92, and it met all the standards that the military had set. It passed all the tests, and it, could have been accepted, I guess, as our service pistol, but it was really, if Beretta didn't fail the test, Beretta was still going to get the contract with the XM10. So, they didn't. The Beretta 92 is a really good pistol, as we know, and it passed, and it became the U.S. military's choice. And I guess on the XM10 trials, Sig did not resubmit the P226. So, and as we know, like, certain units in the United States military did adopt the P226, the Navy SEALs included. Anyway, the world saw what a good pistol that this P85 Ruger had produced was. They ended up making some upgrades based on what they learned in the XM10 trials. They changed the firing pin safety, made it a little stronger, more robust, and they went to a one-piece barrel construction. I guess the early P85s had a two-piece barrel construction, and that helped improve accuracy. So initially, they called that improved P85 the P85 Mark II, and then by 1989, they just decided to call that P85 Mark II the P89, and that's exactly what we have here. And in 93 or 94, they did some additional upgrades to the P89, and one of the most notable of those upgrades is this interesting barrel hood design, where the barrel hood actually rises above kind of the rear part of the slide here. And from what I've read, that is to increase the tightness of the lockup and help, further improve accuracy. And I'm going to tell you right now, this gun has one of the tightest lockups of all the pistols I own. And you can feel it kind of squeeze into battery there. And it's really tight. And honestly, the only other pistol that is maybe as tight as that one is my mint condition Walther P88. It does the same thing. And yeah, I'm comparing a Ruger P89, which I paid honestly less than $400 for, to a gun that's probably 4 times its price. So yeah, man, I mean, this gun is legit when it comes to its design and its capabilities for accuracy, which we'll get into now. When you hold the P89, the thing just feels accurate. You feel very confident that you're going to hit what you're feeling at, that you're going to hit what you're aiming at. The grip is you know, it has these recessed grip panels. So it's not quite as wide as what you find on a Beretta 92 or Sig P226, but it's still wide enough to give you something to grab onto and give you stability as you're holding the gun. And it's got this nice straight back strap that it doesn't have a hump or anything, or any curves that are gonna undermine your reach to the trigger. And when you do get your grip sorted out and feel that trigger, it's like it's this big broad pad that's just like waiting for your fingertip, and it just feels so natural. And you find that wall and you start applying a little bit of pressure, and it has a nice crisp snap, and it's so reassuring to shoot. It's very stable, it's very solid feeling, and you just have this confidence in terms of your ability to shoot accurately. And that feeling you get when you hold this gun and take aim and shoot, it translates to the target. This thing is very accurate, and I was honestly blown away by how accurate this pistol is. So as you can see, this gun just has a penchant for very tight cloverleaf groups. I bought this gun about the same time as I bought my P9S, and if you look at my review on the P9S 9mm Nirvana, that gun just has an X factor in terms of how direct it feels, and how connected you feel to it when you're shooting it. And I guess if pressed, I could probably carve out slightly tighter groups with the P9S, but it ain't too much different with this. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. From what I've read, reading on forums and stuff, people that can shoot, respect these guns for their accuracy. And I've heard people refer to them as, the budget Sig P226, and obviously a Sig P226 is a very accurate gun. I've owned lots of Sigs, including a P226, and this is right there, man. I don't know if it's more accurate. It all comes down to so many different variables in terms of a shooter and everything like that. But suffice to say, anything like a P226 or a Beretta 92 or production grade service pistol, this gun's really as good as any of them. And it's, with that tight lockup, and, the barrel's just very well made. It's, the crown is well done, the rifling is very well defined, everything's just well made and high quality. Now, the thing that's unique about shooting this gun is the recoil impulse, and it is very much a kerchunk. And I say that in the nicest way possible, because this gun gives you the most pleasant, nicest, most luxurious, most plush, most engaging kerchunk that you can ever imagine in a gun that kerchunks. It's not distracting, it's not, harsh or punchy. It's just, you can feel the weight of this slide coming back at you. But as it does, it's almost like this sense of confirmation. It's like a sense of feedback. And, in a lot of my reviews, I talk about some guns that are just kind of communicative in the way they feel and the way they shoot. And while I'll get into the Beretta 92 comparison a little more here, but I feel like a Beretta 92 has a better feel and a more communicative feel, but you get a little bit of that with this kind of plush kerchunk that the P89 gives you. And if you read other people's impressions of the P89 on the internet and forums and whatnot, people talk about that. It's got like this kind of kerchunky feel as it recoils. But again, it's not necessarily a negative. Like I said, there is this feedback that comes from that kerchunk. I call it #kerchunk life in my in my written review. But, you know, if you're looking for the just flattest, most inert recoil impulse that you can find in a semi-automatic pistol, this isn't it. You know, it's not like a modern low bore axis polymer frame pistol where, you know, it just comes straight back at you. That's not what you have here, but there's nothing about the way this pistol shoots that undermines your accuracy. The thing is a tack driver. Now, does that mean you can't shoot it as fast as, you know, some guns that are less chunky in their recoil impulse? I don't know. I mean, I did some mag dumps with this thing. I shot it pretty damn fast. You know, it's a big gun, and it's not like it's hard to shoot fast. It's got a decent single action trigger brake. I'm not sure you'd use this in a competition if you're just trying to hitting plates as fast as you can, but you know, every gun's different in the way it feels and the subjective qualities to how it handles, and this one kerchunks, and I kind of like it. So maybe you will too. So the trigger on the P89 is very nice. The single action brake, you have a nice firm kind of flat feeling wall, and you just come up to it, and it's not the lightest, you know, trigger brake. In terms of its weight, it's similar to a Beretta 92, and then you get this nice snap. And I think the snap on the 92 is just a little more satisfying. I just love the way the Beretta 92's trigger snaps, but it's a good trigger in single action. Like I said, it's got this broad trigger shoe, which is just, I don't know, comfortable, and it's easy to, you know, kind of find exactly where you want your finger on the trigger. And in double action, it's very smooth. It's nice. You know, there's not a lot of stacking, and there's really not much stacking at all, not a ton of over travel, and I prefer it a lot to what I find in the Beretta. I feel like there's more stacking, more over travel in the Beretta action. Honestly, I think the double action definitely gives the SIGs, the P200 series SIGs, a run for their money. My favorite double action triggers are probably still the Smith & Wesson 3rd gens. I feel like they're the most smooth and just consistent throughout the trigger stroke, but these are pretty damn good. The trigger on this is the double action trigger is very nice. Now, in terms of its overall feel and just its presence in the hand and the way it handles and points, the Ruger P89 reminds me the most of the Beretta 92. This is my 1989 Beretta 92F, and it's got this long kind of hefty slide and this hefty presence in the hand, and it points with this authority and confidence that, you know, I find that they kind of point in a similar way. They have a similar feel, and like I said, just a similar character in the way they handle. Now, it's not quite like the pointability you get in a Browning High Power with that kind of slender, graceful, you know, intuitive pointability. It's a little different than that, but it's this very stable, very solid presence in the hand that I get with both these guns. I'll say the grip proportions, and especially the trigger reach and just how your hand engages the trigger relative to the grip, I find a lot of similarities with the 92 and the P89. The P89 actually has the advantage of having a slightly thinner grip given its recessed panels, which I think is a really good idea. I don't know why, you know, more companies don't offer that. And, you know, obviously the back strap on the Ruger P89 is a little straighter. My hand's in the way. The 92 has a little bit of a curve here. And I have never found the curvature on the backstrap of a 92 to be obstructive or negatively influence my trigger reach. I love the ergonomics in the 92, especially with the single action. But to me, these guns handle very similarly. Now, I will say, I think, as I've talked about in many of my reviews, the 92 is just kind of my gold standard for a really nice shooting service pistol. And I feel that it's a bit more communicative than other pistols. I prefer the 92 to a Sig P226 in the way it shoots. I feel like you get a little more feel, and that's true, I think, versus the Ruger. The falling block action, I think, just gives you a little bit more feedback, a little bit more, it makes the recoil impulse a little more intuitive, and that's just something that's special, I think, about the 92. And you don't quite get that in the Ruger, but honestly, you know, compared to like a Sig P226, or, you know, I don't have a P226. I did own one. I've got a P229, which is similar. I feel like you get a little bit more feel with the way the Ruger shoots. And not that SIGs don't shoot well and they're not accurate. SIGs are very, very accurate guns, but a SIG can feel a little bit more kind of cold and clinical in terms of how it shoots. I feel like the Ruger feels a little bit more natural to shoot than a Sig P226. So, and again, you know, we're splitting hairs here with all these guns. All these guns are really good guns. They're all really accurate. They're reliable. They're easy to shoot well. It's just, you know, what are the subjective things that you like in terms of how the guns shoot? And also in terms of reliability and durability, obviously that was a major concern with the design of all these guns back in the early 80s. I've put, I don't know, 500-ish rounds through it, give or take, and I haven't had any problems. That didn't surprise me. Everything I read, these guns are known to be reliable, dependable, and just kind of bulletproof in terms of how they cycle. They have a reputation for durability as well. In designing these to be cast firearms, I think they kind of probably over-engineered them to be even stronger than they needed to be. So, I mean, these are really, really tough pistols. And one guy that was commenting on some of my videos, we got an exchange and the Ruger P89 came up. It was my 2022 gun collection where I featured this gun. He was, I think, an armorer or his brother was or something, for a police department. He was saying that their department was kind of strapped for cash and they didn't have a lot of money, but they needed new pistols, so they ordered Ruger P89s. And he said they did so well with those pistols. They used them for 10 years. They were reliable. The officers liked them. He was saying one of the guys would actually wash his P89 like in the dishwasher. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he was lying. I mean, who knows if that's true? But suffice to say, these have a really good reputation for being just durable, reliable workhorse pistols. And as I've said, they're also very, very accurate. And I always talk about concealed carry in these reviews and kind of look at each gun from a concealed carry perspective, but I don't know how much time we need to spend on that because, I mean, y'all know it's thick and you can stick this in your pants. I've stuck it in my pants in a generic holster, gone to the range, run some errands. It's fine. It's doable. If this is your only gun, yeah. Throw it in your pants if you need to go buy milk at a sketchy gas station at 2 a.m. Yeah, it's a fat gun, it's big, it's probably not going to be your first choice for concealed carry. It's not mine, but you could do it if you wanted to. So, in conclusion, this pistol is not anything less than a first-rate military-grade service pistol. And if you give it any shred of a chance to live up to that standard, you're going to love this pistol. And it definitely does live up to that standard in every way, in terms of accuracy and reliability and feel and shootability. Even if this gun, you know, we're in the same price range as like a Beretta 92, you're going to be able to buy this gun for a couple $100 cheaper probably than a Beretta 92. I would still say it's worth a look. It, I think, would perform as well in terms of objective metrics as a Beretta 92. It's just, you know, it comes down to what subjective elements appeal to you in terms of how the gun shoots. And at the end of the day, I guess I'd pick the Beretta 92, but like, there are certain things I think this gun does better than a Beretta, and double action trigger is definitely one of them, but there are certain things I think this gun does better. But they're both, at the end of the day, they're both great guns, and that's the point I'm trying to make with this review, that the Ruger P89 is a great gun, and if you're looking for a good, solid, all-around service pistol, you're not going to do any worse with this than you would do with a Beretta 92 or a Sig P226 or really any other DASA service pistol. So that does it for our review of the P89 today. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I maybe changed some minds about, you know, how you look at the P89, because when I first owned this and got to shooting it, it changed my mind. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Be sure to check out the written review on hipstertactical.com, and if you like hip-hop beats like the one in the intro, check out my SoundCloud. The link is in the description. Thanks again. This is Hipster Tactical, and I am Matt.